Hello readers, I'm Amy. I have a brand new background. I'm not sure if I'll always be sitting here or if I'm gonna move closer to the window down there. I just rearranged like my entire library because I wanted to change a pace. I got a lot more plants in here now that I have the bookshelf below the window. But I'm not entirely sure where in here I'm going to be filming, but I'm going to be trying it here for this video, obviously. So for today's video, I am doing the Imagine If tag by Emily Fox. So she took book titles and authors and put them in cups and mixed them up and talked about what she ended up with. So I wrote down a list of books and their authors. So there are matches in these two cups. And put the authors in one, put the book titles in another. All of these authors are authors that I have read multiple books from, so I have a pretty good sense of like their style of writing, so I can talk a little bit more about the way that they would write the book. So let's go ahead and get started. What am I going to pick out first? I have Rebecca, and Imagine If it was written by Michael Crichton. So Rebecca is like a gothic classic. You've got this woman who ends up meeting this man on a kind of vacation where she's working for this other woman. She's kind of like her servant or a maid-ish caretaker. And she ends up marrying that guy and going into this big creepy house and is kind of being haunted by the memory of this man's former wife. It's very atmospheric. Then you have Michael Crichton, who can also be very atmospheric. Michael Crichton, of course, is famous for writing Jurassic Park. It's very scientific. It is a sci-fi novel. Jurassic Park and Rebecca are both some of my favorite books. And Daphne du Maurier and Michael Crichton are both some of my favorite authors for very different reasons. Michael Crichton does okay with emotion and he does well with atmosphere, but most of his books are more thrillers, and then Rebecca is more mystery. So emotion and character-wise, I think he would do okay, but I can't imagine what he would do with the story. Like, I'm guessing the characters of Rebecca would all become scientists, and maybe he would go more into, what is it, the science of ghosts, parapsychology? Maybe he would go more into, like, the parapsychology aspect of it, and I don't know. It's really hard to imagine Michael Crichton writing something like Rebecca. He's great, but like for different reasons. And I don't know. He's not much of a romance person. He doesn't really have that many like romantic relationships in his books, none that really stand out. So I feel like the romance part we probably would have skipped at the beginning of Rebecca and just gone straight into here's her background, here's where she's living, and now let's talk about what happens next. So it would definitely be structured differently. Let's see what other shenanigans we can come up with here. Diary of an Unnamed Midwife and Stephen King. Okay. Diary of an Unnamed Midwife, written by Meg Ellison, I do have a standalone review for this, is the first in the Road to Nowhere trilogy. It is a dystopia. Women are getting very sick, particularly pregnant women. Babies aren't really being born. I have not read... What's the book by Stephen King? The Stand. I haven't read The Stand, but I know that's a dystopian book. So I know Stephen King can write dystopia, but as much as I enjoy Stephen King's writing, he oftentimes really misses the mark when it comes to talking about things like race and gender. Like, I totally respect Stephen King as an author, but he is an old white guy. So there's that. I think if it was written by him, I don't think the discussion of gender would have been as nuanced. I don't think that the character would have been kind of questioning their gender as the story goes on. I do think he would have done really well with like the religious aspects of the book, where our character ends up finding a Mormon group that she kind of joins for a bit for safety. I think he would do well with that part. He would probably play up those aspects of it a little more. He would do really well with the survival writing. So like, I think it would still be a decent book, but a lot of the gender aspects that really kind of, that really add to the series would definitely be missing. So I think I would still enjoy the book, but it wouldn't be what it is, as it is, written by Meg Ellison. So, but I mean, if it didn't exist like that, I guess I wouldn't totally be missing those aspects. But I like the gender aspects of the story, so I don't know. It would be fine. I think that's my final idea here, is that it would be fine. We have Jurassic Park and Jeffrey Eugenides. Jeffrey Eugenides wrote The Virgin Suicides, which is pretty famous. It has a movie out about it, where you have these four or five sisters, living in the suburbs. We don't really have anything explained to us, but the parents are really religious, and the name Virgin Suicides kind of tells you what's going to happen. Then Jurassic Park, again, written by Michael Crichton, very sci-fi. I just don't think this would work. I've read a lot of Jeffrey Eugenides, and he's very good at kind of I don't know. He's very good at setting a tone for a story, or kind of like talking about generational traumas and stuff. But Jurassic Park is so scientific, and I haven't read anything from Jeffrey Eugenides that's similar. So I think Jurassic Park, you would have to take out all of the science of it and just focus on the experience of these people in a dinosaur park. And being Jeffrey Eugenides, I think it would focus a lot more on the characters playing off of one another, which the book kind of already does, and a lot less on the animals and the awe of being around them and the science of it. Frankly, I think Jurassic Park would be a lot less interesting if it was written by Jeffrey Eugenides. I really like Jeffrey Eugenides' books, but Jurassic Park is not the way to go for him. My Sweet Audrina and V.C. Andrews. I'm going to repick the author because My Sweet Audrina was in fact written by V.C. Andrews. Who's going to write this? Daphne du Maurier. Okay, so V.C. Andrews, very famous for the incest in her books. Fun fact, My Sweet Audrina and Flowers in the Attic are the only book and book series that were completely written by her, except I think the prequel for Flowers in the Attic was not completed by her, but all of the like hundreds of other books under her name are not actually by her. They're by ghost writers. But My Sweet Audrina, it's been so long since I've read it. I think this is like one of the few books of hers that doesn't have a lot of incest in it, but it is very much kind of a thriller. It's very creepy, and I think Daphne du Maurier would do really, really great at setting the tone for that. Let me actually go pick up My Sweet Audrina and tell you what the plot is, because it's been years since I've read it, and I keep looking at it on my shelves like, I think I need to reread that book. So we have My Sweet Audrina here. Summary is, Audrina Adair wanted so to be as good as her sister. She knew her father could not love her as he loved her sister. Her sister was so special, so perfect, and dead. Upstairs in the locked room were her sister's clothes and dolls, her animals and games, and her sacred rocking chair, which held the secret of all her sister's gifts. Now Audrina will rock and claim those gifts. Now she will come face to face with the dangerous, terrifying secret that everyone knows. Everyone except My Sweet Audrina. For the life of me, I cannot remember how this book ends. But regardless, I do think, with the exception of the incest, V.C. Andrews and Daphne du Maurier have very similar styles. They're both very good at setting tones. They both have a really great idea of kind of these gothic horror thriller stories. One big departure, I think, besides the incest storylines, is that Daphne du Maurier is missing the eroticism that VC Andrews has. Like, even when she's not writing about these creepy situations between relatives, like, the way she structures a sentence, there's just something very erotic about it. Not in, like, a turn-on way, but in kind of a, like, you can't stop reading, you're kind of drugged on this book way. There's no way to really explain really well V.C. Andrews' writing. But regardless, My Sweet Audrina, I can see it being written by Daphne du Maurier and having that kind of, like, creepy ending, and you don't really know where the book's gonna go. She could do it. She could do it really well. If Middlesex, which is written by Jeffrey Eugenides, about a bunch of college graduates going out in the world and experiencing life, and John Boyne is the author of The Heart's Invisible Furies, one of my favorite books. I think he could do it. Heart's Invisible Furies is following an Irishman throughout his entire life. He's gay, he's not comfortable talking about it with the people around him. It visits all of these different aspects of his life through the years. And then Middlesex is following an intersex person through their families, like, generations, and immigrating and trying to make a living in America, and then the main character kind of growing up and dealing with their physical, sexual situation. I think there's a lot of crossover there. I think John Boyne could do it. I love Jeffrey Eugenides' books. There's just something about them that gets me, but honestly, I think John Boyne might actually do it better. I do think Middlesex can be really drawn out with all of this generational stuff that we're talking about, and I think John Boyne would do really well at kind of, like, tightening it up a little bit, chopping a couple of the extras, making it a faster read. So yeah, I think he would do a really good job of that, actually. What else do we have here? The Heart's Invisible Furies, written by V.C. Andrews. V.C. Andrews does do generational stuff. So Flowers in the Attic is a series of 4 books plus a prequel, and each book kind of talks about, well, the first 2 books are about the same generation, then the following books and the prequel are about different generations of the family. So she could do that. My Heart's Invisible Furies would end up being a series of books, not a standalone book, if it was written by V.C. Andrews. Also, there would almost have to be an incestuous aspect to that. Why do I read so much V.C. Andrews? Not really now, but why did I read so much of V.C. Andrews when she talks so much about incest, which is a very problematic concept? I don't know. Something about her writing just drags me in. I can't really explain it. I think she could write this book, but instead of me crying throughout this reading and both hating and loving the character and the plot and just having the emotional connection that I have to it, I wouldn't have that emotional connection. Heart's Invisible Furies would be a much creepier story. There would be incest in it somewhere, and it would be a series of books. I think I would still enjoy it, but I wouldn't have that same emotional connection to the story. No. Oh. Okay. Needful Things, one of my favorite Stephen King books. I have a standalone kind of how to read it review, written by Jane Austen. There's really not a lot of crossover there. I think if it was written by Jane Austen, the kind of spiritual monster aspect would not be there. I think she could do okay with keeping it roughly the length it is. Probably, I mean, you'd miss out on a lot of the length without the spiritual villain. The proprietor of Needful Things, instead of being this spiritual kind of monster, would probably be like a matchmaker of some kind, or someone who's trying to destroy the couples. And there would be, there's so much character development in Needful Things, which I think Jane Austen also does really well with character development, but of course there would be a lot more romance in Needful Things. it would not at all be the same book, and I'm really struggling to try and figure out what kind of book it would be if you crossed over Needful Things and Jane Austen. Like, what would you end up with? A really thick romance book about all of the relationships between the people in this town? She could probably keep the death in there, but it probably wouldn't be murder death. It would be like somehow dying of natural coincidental causes or something. I don't know. What are we left with? Pride and Prejudice by Meg Ellison. Pride and Prejudice, of course, is a very classic book about couples with different kind of outlooks on life coming together. And then Meg Ellison, she's kind of dipping her toes in everything. She's done some short stories talking about body diversity and fatness. She's done the Road to Nowhere series, which is dystopian. She's done Find Layla, which is YA. She has Number One Fan coming out in August, which is more a thriller. I don't know that I can really see her doing romance like this. There is romance in the Road to Nowhere series, but a lot of it is almost like a romance of survival rather than class romance. So I think she could do it, but there would be a lot more gender diversity in Pride and Prejudice for sure, which I think would be really interesting. It would be more modern in its style and its writing rather than being a classic. I think she could pull it off, and honestly, I think she could pull it off a little, not better, because like Pride and Prejudice is a classic. It is something that has inspired a lot of stories. It's kind of the basis kind of a book. But I could see Meg Ellison really modernizing Pride and Prejudice, and in that way, I think I would like it even better than I already do, because I do enjoy Pride and Prejudice, but if you had a lot of the gender diversity and a lot of the queerness going into it, that would be a really cool book. So I think she could pull it off and she could modernize it, and I think she'd do really well with it. So that is it for the Imagine If book tag by Emily Fox. I would love to tag Hillary from Melted Books. I want to see what you do with this and what you come up with. Like, I think it would be amazing. Victoria from What Victoria Read. I want you to put Handmaid's Tale and put Margaret Atwood in this, plus a couple of other books, and see what you come up with. That would also be amazing. Imagine if Handmaid's Tale was written by someone like Stephen King, or who's the author you really like? C.J. Skews? Is that right? Or Diane Setterfield, maybe? I don't know. That would be amazing. Those are the two people that I tag in pretty much everything. Also, Mel from Book Fiend Called Mel, please do this tag. Again, I think you would have a lot of fun with it. Pretty much anyone who wants to do this tag, like just run away with it. Have fun. I want to see what you come up with. I will be watching these videos. I want to really see this tag grow because I want to see what kind of crazy combinations of authors and books people come up with. So that is going to be it from me. Please like, subscribe, be my friend on social media. I will see all of you in my next video. Bye, friends.